Hello, everybody. So this is kind of going to be a part two, just poking and prodding the idea from one of the previous videos or the previous video, titled "Be Irresponsible." So let's get into it. So probing deeper into this process, knowing the difference between an asset and a liability. All right, I assure you, it's not going to be this dry. I'm still warming up here. Okay. So, asset. So people buy a car. Naturally, to the average person, you might consider that an asset. In most cases, especially with newer cars, it's a fucking liability. There's no getting around that part. The asset is the note, the piece of paper that says you owe 50K for that hunk of shit held together with duct tape and hope and dreams. All right. A fundamental part of the idea, just taking all of the promises, throwing them into the grinder, giving the finger to the system, and refusing to pay for any of it. You have to look at it from this understanding. All right. Just a second. All right. In terms of physical value, there is some collateral value there. All right, it's low level collateral. The debt itself, the piece of paper, is a higher level collateral, especially because you can, sell the paper debt like it's nothing, unless everybody stops paying. If everybody stops paying, then all of a sudden it becomes a live hand grenade, and somebody lost the pin. All right, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. If you can't, essentially, if you are stuck with a non-performing loan, and you force that asset, quote unquote, to become a liability, um, you essentially force an entire market shift based on that. Okay. So the car dealership might be able to find somebody who would pay 50 bucks or 50. Of course, they find somebody to pay 50 bucks for one. Um, they might find somebody willing to pay 50K. All right, at least sign up for 50K in debt. But the banks and any other loan companies, public or private, it doesn't matter. Once the damage is done to the perception of the collateral, it wouldn't even matter if you have a high credit score. The banks themselves would refuse to lend 50K for a car. All right. This is the kind of structural change that honestly needs to happen in the US. If you dry up or completely erode the faith in the credit system, just on a generational scale, if you destroy that faith, all of a sudden everything has to be priced to clear. All right. You can't just backfill everything with debt. It no longer becomes the seller's market, it becomes the buyer's market. All right. Whoever has cash and can buy it now gets it. Whoever has to call in and try to get a loan set up and terms and all that shit, they're going to be on the phone trying to get that deal set up. Meanwhile, the guy with $100 in his pocket, and instead of 50K in debt, now he's got 5 in debt or 10 in debt, is driving away in the nice shiny new car. Could there honestly be, in that framework, could it honestly get to that point? Absolutely. Absolutely. And in the process, too, the value of the dollar increases. All right. If you, on a generational scale, if you grenade the faith in the credit system, it forces the prices back to where they should be. All right, you have to think like perfect example, the utility companies who there was this story from this middle-aged chick who I guess they had a spare house, an extra house, maybe a dead relative's house. I'm not exactly sure. But with the thermostat set to the lowest setting in New Jersey, somehow over the course of 1 month, and of course, this is tied to data centers and all of that peak demand bullshit. Um, somehow, for 1 month, their electric bill on the property went from like 100 a month max, 200 a month max to 1,300 a month plus. And of course, that immediately leads to a call like, are you people fucking high? I'm not paying that. All right, because the average person, whether they have a house or don't, the average person doesn't have money. All right, the average person is in an incredibly weak financial position. It is what it is. People can't afford this shit anymore. All right, they can't afford price gouging. They can't afford to prop up these systems. All right, which is why honestly I think that's the way. I think this is inevitably the way that things are going to go. All right. You already see it with there are people who are out there posting online that they're, just actively not paying their rent. All right. They're not paying their rent. They're not paying their utilities. They are using the legal protections that are in place, renters' rights, the deals with the utility companies because they are regulated to keep the, power on and the water going. And it's just like, uh, is it scuzzy behavior? Yeah, kinda. There are certain parts of American culture that aren't exactly clean, but at the same time, I totally understand it because more and more people are put into circumstances that they can't really handle anymore. Prices have just gone too high. Let's expand it to education real quick to hit on that again. If the colleges are offering, let's say it's 60 grand to get a 4-year degree. We know it's not going to be, but let's say it's 60 grand to hop into a program. All right, whether there's a job at the end of it or not. If nobody pays their student debt, okay, nobody will lend. And if nobody lends, then the prices have to come down to clearing prices. All right, which means maybe you can get 10 grand out of somebody, but you also have to extend to them, company credit, personal credit to make it happen. Okay? And that is the best you can do because nobody's got 60 grand just lying around. Well, most people don't have 10 grand lying around. Okay? When it comes to the private and the federal level, same thing. Quality of the collateral collapses. All right, what does that mean? It means you can't sell it, you can't get rid of it, you have all this worthless paper. And, at the government level, yeah, they could try to immediately garnish wages and they destroy whatever spending is left in the incredibly weak economy that we have. And this is largely the game that's being played right now, where most people, like overwhelming majority, like 90% plus of the population, isn't paying back their student loans. All right, because they literally can't afford the payments with how high the cost of living is. It's already eaten up what would have went to those payments. Okay. The next best choice is to try to yoink the degrees. And if you do that, okay, congratulations, you yoink the degree. Now these people can't get jobs in the field, so now they're never going to pay you back. So that doesn't make sense. They could, they're never going to pay you back. They're never possibly going to ever get a job in the field that they studied for. It's self destructive, it's childish, and it won't work. The next best bet would be to go after people when they reach retirement age. Well, for the millennial generation, I mean, Gen X will probably get a decent taste of Social Security before it completely blows up, but most of them will get the shaft. Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, we're on our own. Social Security isn't going to exist for us. All right. It not only is it unfeasible, like you literally need the AI techno communism revolution to make that happen. You essentially have to boot humans out of every step in the supply chain to bring the fulfillment cost for any unit good down to near zero. Okay. And whilst it's a possibility, I don't think this system is necessarily going to remain stable enough for us to actually see that happen. Okay. But let's assume economic miracle happens and you're looking at Social Security. All right. Oh god, honestly, it's a gigantic fucking. It's a sick joke, but it's a joke. The idea that that promise would actually get paid out for the younger generations at this point. Oh yeah. Anyway, getting past that, if they try to garnish the Social Security payments that would go to millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, then they just create another crisis. They create a retirement crisis. They would suck any kind of money that would be chasing after assets, and they would drain bank accounts, and they would crush spending, and overall they'd maybe not wreck, but they do a decent amount of damage to the economy trying to force people to make good on their promises. Okay? Considering that they can't hold up their promises. Shocker. But the amount of damage that would be done if somehow this economy made it another 30 plus years, if this system survived another 30 plus years, which is doubtful. It is doubtful. You see active shifts happening. It is what it is. But in Fantasyland, where millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha were to get it, essentially what the government would end up having to do is bail out all those systems, just forgive the debts, write them off, destroy the collateral, destroy the paperwork collateral, and just walk away from it. Because regardless, at that point, it's been unproductive debt, and whether they like it or not, people can't afford to pay their debts back now. Do you really think they can afford to pay it back 30 years from now, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now? It's not going to fucking happen. It's not going to fucking happen. Instead of trying to bend people over the barrel and trying to bleed them dry for whatever cent you can get out of them, maybe you guys should be focusing on actually getting the fucking economy up and running again. Anyway. Next example. The boomer Airbnbs. All right. The average age, I've seen two numbers so far. The average age for new home buyers is 40. And then I saw another number recently that put it at 56. So essentially, boomers are trading houses with each other because nobody else can actually afford to play in the game. One, that's terrible. Two, most of this has to do with a massive wave of boomers jumping into Airbnb and trying to do rentals that way. And boomers did make a decent amount of money with that. But holding on to the houses long term, um, essentially housing in the United States is transitioning from being an asset to being a liability because of the economic and sovereign risk attached to it. All right. The fact that insurance rates are absolutely insane and they're getting worse. The fact that the insurance companies have gigantic black holes that are honestly the equivalent similar to, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns. All right, like you've got black holes in the books that the Fed, the government is going to have to bail out. They're going to have the money printer just stationed right outside the black holes in the insurance company's books, just printing nonstop to feed them. So they can make good on their promises. As God knows, if you lose the insurance companies, holy shit, you lose a lot of the economy, at least in its current form. All right, because everything's based on promises and everybody is trying really hard to not get burnt. All right, and for the most part, if you are in any way even barely structurally significant to the system and its general maintenance, you're too big to fail at this point. Okay? It's just like basic employment, basic anything. Just repaving the roads, you might honestly find yourself in a position as a company where you're too big to fail. All right? Because we live in that much of a clown world, all right, where they've tried for so long to ensure that, at least at the higher level, higher and mid level, that nobody ever lost. And the reality is there is no game, all right, if there is not a winner and a loser. Somebody always loses. This is not participation trophy economics. Somebody always loses. All right. But they try to prop up a system and create a system where no one loses and we can just ignore reality forever. That this is the result. And regardless of which direction it goes now, it is destined to fail. The math ain't math and the numbers don't work. Regardless, boomer Airbnb rentals, boomers buying up like 6 different houses, 8 different houses, 28 different houses, 102 different houses, and renting them all out on Airbnb for insane amounts of money to the youth. All right. That will implode if everybody just stops paying the rent. If we go back to COVID and people just stop paying their rents. Now, is it dirty? Absolutely. But at the same time, what does it do? What does it achieve? Well, all of a sudden, being a landlord isn't a business anymore. Essentially, refusing to pay off the debts and make good on the promises that are legitimately abusive forces all of the rent seekers out of the system. All right, because we largely have a rent seeking economy. Everything's a fucking subscription now. So if you make the situation so unstable and so untenable, they'll all just come flooding out of the system. If they can't collect the rents, if they can't collect the rents and they can't get rid of you for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, injunctions, stops, court battles, all this shit. If you make it a gigantic fucking headache to be a landlord in the United States, all of the people who are asking $2,000 for a shoebox, 2,000 a month for a shoebox apartment, uh, they're either going to go underwater and have to cut a deal where you pay an actual reasonable, livable rent, or their entire business, because it is a business for them, uh, blows up, goes up in smoke, and that's it. Then all of a sudden, there's new houses on the market, and the banks have to get rid of them quickly because there's even more right behind them. The collateral implodes. Prices go down. People can afford to actually live again. All right? In terms of the justifications for being irresponsible, honestly, it's bulletproof. Will it create economic problems? Yes. Will doing nothing about it lead to economic problems? Yeah. We are in the ultimate catch-22 scenario. In order to prop up the system, you have to screw the entire working class. You have to consistently increase rates. All right. The only way to break that is to break the entire collateral production industry. You have to essentially destroy the credit system. All right. And will it cause a drop in jobs? Yeah, actually. Yeah. It'll essentially be 2008 all over again, except this time there's not enough money in the world to bail out the banks again. Not enough money in the world. If all of a sudden all American collateral is worthless, even the people who refuse to participate will be forced to participate. Because why the hell would they want to pay 3 times more, 4 times more, 5 times more than everybody else? It'll create a cascade. And it's just like, oh my God, the wealth destruction. It's paper wealth. It was phony in the fucking beginning. All right, like you built a system, like the entire system is built on promises and perceived value. The reality is most of the boomer houses are maybe not rodent infested, but you got termite damage, you got problems. Like one of the big ones, one of the things that actually has the insurance companies kind of shaken a bit is the expanding foam insulation. All right, particularly for the roofing. Why? Because it hides the termites. Termites actually they use the insulation foam as a nesting base. So they can chew through the wood, they can chew through the rafters, but they can also chew right through the insulation foam. So and then it stops the ventilation. You get mold buildup, mildew, all sorts of problems. So that on its own, with maybe it cost five to 8K to put it in, all right, to spray it in, and it's going to cost 12 to 20K to scrape it all out. If you ever have to redo the rafters, if you ever have to, deal with the termite infestation, that is bad enough. All right. There are problems everywhere in the system. And honestly, a lot of it is because we refuse to let people lose. Okay. And we actively have been enforcing a system where a certain group of people who hold assets, are never allowed to lose, because if they did, oh my God, it'd be the end of the fucking world. All right? It wouldn't. It wouldn't. Would the economy take a hit? Yeah. Would there be less jobs? Yeah. What do you have right now? The economy is taking a hit, and we have less jobs. Same problem. It's literally the same problem. All right? And all of the problems in the Western economies come down to the root cause of you've been propping up the older generations and screwing the youth. You've done this on an industrial scale. You took all the jobs and you sent them overseas. All the base labor jobs, all of the skilled jobs that the youth were supposed to get to replace those low, low quality, low mental capacity needing manufacturing jobs. What you didn't automate, you've sent all those jobs overseas now too. All right, it's not a joke for most people. Most areas of the country, you are effectively capped at 50 grand a year, no matter what you do. All right, whether you try to go to college, get a degree that's in demand, when you account for the student loan debt and paying that off and everything else, you're looking at only taking home 50K. How long are you going to be paying those debts off? The reality is when it comes to the boomer generation, they spent most of their lives giving the finger to the system and doing whatever they wanted. The consequences has been never-ending bailouts for anything that blows up in their wake. And now they're in charge of everything. So why the hell aren't we doing the same? All right. Is it irresponsible? Yeah. Yeah. Would you be able to afford a car again? Yep. And God knows if enough people, if we had multiple generations get in on this, we could legitimately take down Ford. We can legitimately take down GM and all the other auto companies that are peddling trash. All right, and they can make the argument, well, the government's making us do it. Okay. Still doesn't explain why you're putting out garbage. I mean, yeah, the size of a light pickup truck has turned into a full size. Okay. But why is it that the seals last 5 years instead of 10 or 20, like the old seals used to? Why is it that the transmissions last 5 years or less? Why is it that, the problems are just, they're compounding, and there's no excuse for it. All right. I think that covered most of what I wanted to add. Although I will say this too. One of the most frustrating things is the fact that you are told to be responsible and to suffer, struggle, and sacrifice in a country that does not invest in its own people. You look at China. You look at India. You look at most of the countries around the world. They are actively trying to invest in their own people for their own embetterment. Okay? Might not be perfect, but they're actually making progress. On the other hand, the United States, we will pull people from all over the world. We will flood the country with migrants and give them a paid-for education and welfare. Meanwhile, the local population is getting booted off the welfare programs and is expected to go $100,000 plus into debt for degrees for jobs that are actively being sent overseas. Why are you investing in a country that doesn't invest in you? You got to ask yourself this question. Nobody, as far as this country is concerned, as far as the U.S. is concerned, The US doesn't invest in its own people. It doesn't give a shit about its own people. You got to be truthful about it. They don't give a damn. You are a dollar sign or you are a problem. All right? And if you're a problem, they'll throw you into the for-profit prison system and turn you into a dollar sign. All right? It honestly, it just like the corporations themselves at the low level, well, high level too, but particularly at the low level. These are all just rackets. All right? It's a bunch of, man, I paid into the system, but I'm going to collect as much as I can off you dumb little shits. Listen here, you little shit. No, no. It is time for things to change in the country. The idea that we are going to own nothing and be happy? No, 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 we're not doing that. We're not doing that because if the people in control and the people in power want to essentially perma-enslave the human race, yeah, that's going to be a problem. That's not going to go over well. Given Klaus isn't in charge anymore, and God knows he did a whole lot of damage by opening his mouth. But that's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. You will never be able to stamp out the persistent rebelling that will come from it. And even the idea of hitting the techno utopia. Even that is a stretch because human beings in utopian conditions were no different than the mouse utopia experiment or the rat utopia experiment that followed. I think they tried it with another animal species. They might have tried it with birds for all I know. We're no different. You put people in utopian circumstances, and they will naturally trend towards destroying the utopia. All right, because they'll be bored out of their minds. Essentially, with a utopia, you get a synthesized leadership structure, a synthesized hierarchy, kind of how the European Union is. All right, where you don't even, vote for those fuckers. You look at that for what it is, and it's just like, oh, you guys are asking for an overthrow. You're asking for people to fight back against that. People have a natural desire for freedom. All right, the price of utopia in one form or another is some form of slavery. And considering that, all throughout human history, whether it's been window dressed or not, the majority of the human race has been a slave in one form or another, people might be more willing to accept the idea of whatever kind of new slavery model would come from that. At first. But after about, a generation, it imploded. All right. Is what it is. Don't vote for Cocteau or whatever the fuck his name was. I hope you know how to use the 3 seashells. Anyway, I'll end it there. You guys have a good one. I will see you in the next one.